Welcome to Official History World, where history comes alive. Explore the events, empires, and people that shaped our world. Subscribe and be part of our journey through time.
Premium Forever Love necklace to my beautiful love. Buy this necklace, click my YouTube video description product link, and shop now.
One of the largest battles during World War II, with more than 1 million total casualties, the Soviets were able to successfully prevent the most serious attempt to capture their capital, the Battle of Moscow. In August of 1939, Germany signed a mutual non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union, which was then led by Joseph Stalin, in which the two nations agreed not to take military action against each other for a period of 10 years. Given the long history of bitter conflict between the two countries, this pact surprised the world and dismayed France and Britain, who had signed their own agreement with Hitler's regime, only to see it violated when Germany invaded Czechoslovakia earlier that year. Hitler wanted to neutralize an existing mutual defense treaty between France and the Soviet Union and ensure the Soviets would stand by when Germany invaded its next target, Poland. The pact included secret plans to divide Poland into spheres of influence, with Germany annexing the western half of the country and the Soviet Union the east. On the Eastern Front, on September 3, 1939, 2 days after Nazi Germany invaded Poland, France and Britain declared war on Germany. After 8 months of so-called phony war, Germany launched its blitzkrieg through Western Europe, conquering Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and France in just 6 weeks, beginning in May of 1940. With France defeated and only Britain left standing against Germany in Western Europe, Hitler turned toward his next goal, Germany's expansion into the Eastern Front, and the living space that would ensure the dominance of the German people. By definition, this required the defeat of the Soviet Union and the colonization of its territories, especially the resource-rich Ukraine, by Germans rather than its native Slavic population, which Hitler viewed as racially inferior. By the end of 1940, Hitler had issued Directive 21 in order for Germany's planned invasion of the Soviet Union, codenamed Operation Barbarossa after the nickname of the powerful medieval Holy Roman Emperor. The invasion called for German troops to advance along a line running north to south from the port of Archangel to the port of Astrakhan on the Volga River near the Caspian Sea. Hitler had hoped to repeat the success of the Blitzkrieg in Western Europe and win a quick victory over the massive nation he viewed as Germany's sworn enemy. On June 22, 1941, more than 3 million German and Axis troops invaded the Soviet Union along an 1,800-mile-long front, launching Operation Barbarossa. It was Germany's largest invasion force of the war, representing some 80% of the army, the German armed forces, and one of the most powerful invasion forces in history. Despite repeated warnings, Stalin refused to believe that Hitler was planning an attack, and the German invasion caught the Red Army unprepared. With the three-pronged attack toward Leningrad in the north, Moscow in the center, and Ukraine in the south, German panzer tank divisions and air bombardments helped Germany gain an early advantage against the numerous but poorly trained Soviet troops. On the first day of the attack alone, the Luftwaffe managed to shoot down more than 1,000 Soviet aircrafts. German forces initially moved quickly along the vast front, taking millions of Soviet soldiers as prisoners. However, the armed SS death squads followed in the army's wake, seeking out and killing many civilians, especially Soviet Jews. Hitler's directives for the invasion include the Commissioner Order, which authorized the immediate execution of all captured enemy officers. Many Soviet prisoners of war were also killed immediately upon capture, another practice that had violated international war protocols. While they had made territorial gains, German forces also sustained heavy casualties, as the Soviets' numerical advantage and the strength of their resistance proved greater than expected. By the end of August, with German panzer divisions just 220 miles from the Soviet capital, Hitler ordered, over the protests of his generals, that the drive against Moscow be delayed in favor of focusing on Ukraine, to the south. Kiev fell to the Wehrmacht by the end of September 1941. In the north, Germans managed to cut Leningrad off from the rest of Russia, but they weren't strong enough to take the city itself. Instead, Hitler ordered his forces to starve Leningrad into submission, beginning a siege that would end up lasting some 872 days. In early October 1941, Hitler ordered the launch of Operation Typhoon, the German offensive against Moscow. The delay had given the Soviets time to strengthen the defense of their capital with some 1 million troops and 1,000 new T-34 tanks. After a successful initial assault, the muddy roads of autumn, known as Rasputa, literally stalled the German offensive outside Moscow, where they ran into the improved Russian defenses. In mid-November, Panzer divisions attempted a final attempt to encircle Moscow, getting within 12 miles of the city, but reinforcements from Siberia helped the Red Army beat back the attack, halting the German offensive for good as the brutal winter arrived. Soviet forces mounted a surprise counterattack in early December, putting the Germans on the defensive and forcing them into retreat. Despite its territorial gains and the damage inflicted on the Red Army, Operation Barbarossa failed in its primary objective, to force the Soviet Union to capitulate. Though Hitler blamed the winter weather for the failure of the offensive, the entire operation had suffered from a lack of long-term strategic planning. Counting on a quick victory, the Germans had failed to set up adequate supply lines to deal with the vast distances, the icy weather, and the harsh terrain. They had also underestimated the strength of the Soviet resistance, which Stalin skillfully encouraged with his calls to defend Mother Russia. Hitler's Commissar order and other ruthless behavior on the part of the Germans also served to solidify the Red Army's determination to fight until the end. Fighting was far from over on the Eastern Front, and Hitler ordered another major strategic offensive against the Soviet Union in June of 1942. Thanks to similar obstacles, it eventually met with failures as well, with the Battle of Stalingrad in 1943 helping turn the tide decisively toward the Allied powers in World War II. Here are some awesome fun facts about the Battle of Moscow. At the Nuremberg trials, Wilhelm Keitel was asked by Soviet prosecutors that, quote, when did he know that the war was lost for Germany? And he answered, Moscow. The Battle of Moscow. Another fun fact, the Battle of Moscow can be easily split into two stages: the defensive, which was from September 30th to December 4th, and the counteroffensive, which is only about a month long, from December 5th to January 7th of the next year. Another fact, on December 7th, 1941, a Soviet KV-1 heavy tank under the command of Pavel Gutz engaged a German armored formation. The Soviet commander successfully knocked out 10 German enemy tanks during the skirmish. He was hit 29 times by enemy fire during the battle but suffered only minor damages. Number 4, as a result of the counteroffensive near Moscow and the general offensive, the German units were driven back 100 to 250 kilometers. During the battle for Moscow, the subway of the Soviet capital was converted into an underground city, and there was a library at the train station, and shops and hairdressers worked in the metro. During the years of the war, 217 children were born in this underground place. From the total of 849 tanks used by the Soviets during the Battle of Moscow, only 94 were T-34 tanks, and 47 were KV-1s. There is popular belief that the battle was won by the Soviets, mostly because of the contribution of the Siberian divisions, which came in and rescued them. But it is important to note that in the defensive stage of the battle, the Wehrmacht faced only newly formed divisions and militia units formed in the Soviet regions. The battle for Moscow made it clear to the German command that the hopes for a blitzkrieg were not justified. A general wrote, quote, now it was important for the political leaders of Germany to To understand that the days of blitzkrieg had sunk into the past, we were confronted by an army far superior in its fighting qualities to all other armies that we had ever encountered on the battlefield." End quote. A teacher from Polyana informed the Red Army about the redeployment of a German long-range artillery battery unit. The Red Army didn't waste time and blasted the German position with a counter-artillery barrage. And in an order to lower the efficiency of the Luftwaffe bombing campaign, the Soviets enacted a blackout decree in Moscow. All lights in the city were turned off, and the decree was strictly enforced by the local authorities, who were allowed to shoot at the windows of citizens who forgot to close their lights. When Zhukov took charge of the forces defending Moscow, only 90,000 Red Army soldiers were left to face the might of the army. And during the battle, the German 37 and 50 mm anti-tank guns were totally ineffective against the KV-1 tanks, and one German soldier who inspected a damaged Soviet tank counted only 35 unsuccessful hits. And because of the Soviet harsh winter, 133,000 Wehrmacht soldiers died because of frostbite. And although the battle for Moscow was still raging, the population of Soviet capital was informed on December 13th that the danger of German encirclement was over. Finally, according to the report of the Army Group Center, between October 1st through 19th, 1941, the German army captured an astonishing amount of Soviet equipment. They captured 1,277 tanks, 4,378 artillery pieces, 1,009 anti-aircraft and anti-tank guns, and 87 fighter aircraft. Many consider the Battle of Moscow to be the first turning point of World War II on the Eastern Front. Some even consider the battle as the only opportunity for the Germans to prevail in the East, and by the middle of 1942, the Soviets had organized enough troops under arms that the Germans could not hope for anything better than a negotiated peace. Even if the Soviet recapture of Stalingrad in 1942 had never happened, and the Battle of Kursk in 1943 had been a German victory, Hitler still could not have won a total victory against the Soviets' overwhelming numbers. But had the Germans been able to take Moscow, or isolated it very early, they might have dropped the Soviets to their knees and forced them to negotiate a ceasefire, or perhaps even concede a defeat. But we will never know the outcome if that would have happened.